guys, it's Sam, and today I want to talk about my favorite audiobooks. So a lot of you guys have been requesting this topic because I've been saying that this year I've read a lot more audiobooks than I have in the past, so here we are talking about some of my favorites. These aren't all of the audiobooks that I've read. There's been a lot that I've read that I haven't liked. These are my favorites. And this video is being sponsored by Scribd, so thank you so much to them for sponsoring this. Scribd is an audiobook subscription service, and it is one of the more inexpensive ones out there. It's definitely cheaper than Audible. It is $8.99 a month for unlimited listening. One of the books that I'm going to be talking about more at length in this video, and one of my favorite audiobooks, is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which is available for you to listen to on Scribd. So if you want to read this audiobook, you can use my link, which is listed down below in the description, to read this audiobook and get 30 days free on Scribd to try it out. And now onto my list of favorite audiobooks. So right off the bat, we'll talk about The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is a book that I originally read on hard copy, so I do own a hard copy, but I've been rereading it nearly every year on audiobook, and I just love it. I love the narrator, I love the voices that he uses, and every time I listen to it, I just get re-immersed in this world and this atmosphere, and it's really nice to listen to it on audiobook because with rereading, I really struggle to reread books because I was like, I shouldn't waste my time, but if I'm listening to it on audiobook, I feel like it's, you know, not a waste because I'm actually spending my time well, because when I listen to audiobooks, I'm usually in the car, driving somewhere, commuting, or I'm like cleaning or something, so it's a multitasking activity, and this just makes me feel like I can visit old favorites while listening to the audiobook. Next we have Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a book that I've been meaning to read for so long, and I finally got around to it this year, and I was so immersed in it. I love the narrator. I love everything about it. It is so good. It's one of those audiobooks, actually all of these audiobooks I'm going to be talking about are books that I would sneak in other times to read it, because typically speaking, like I said, I listen to it on my commute, and when I'm like maybe like walking or whatever, I would be taking extra walks to read this. I'd be walking longer. I would sit in the car to finish chapters. Like, I was so engrossed by this audiobook. Similarly, we have the Themis Files series by Sylvain Neuvel, and these are full cast productions, and they are so fun. They are very straightforward, and they're a science fiction series, and they're kind of like almost universally appealing, I feel like, because they're just like this, they feels like listening to a movie. And again, this was one that I was just so immersed in, was taking extra walks for. And they're fairly short because these books in the physical copies are like case files. So it's almost like the Illuminate books, and it's very easy to get through on audio. So they're fairly short, and I was able to read these in a matter of days when audiobooks usually take me a little bit longer. I do listen to audiobooks sped up. So for myself, I listen to them between 1.5 speed and 2 speed. So I tend to get through audiobooks fairly quick anyway, but these were just so much fun. Then we have Red Sister by Mark Lawrence, one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, and I listened to the audio, and I adore the audio, and I plan to listen to the rest of the books on audio because this was so much fun. There's some gruesome bits in this. This is a grimdark book, and it's an adult grimdark, so it's dark, and there's some descriptions of like some body gore and stuff, like some trigger warnings for this book. So if you're listening to it and you might have like a queasy stomach, maybe just check into the trigger warnings for this book and see if you're going to be okay, but I really enjoyed this, was so immersed in this world, and what's not to love about magical assassin nuns. Then we have The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater, and I actually listened to the second 2 books on audiobook. I read the first 2 books in physical copy, and then I listened to this one and The Raven King on audiobook. I really liked the audiobook narrator. He gives the characters their southern twang because this takes place in Henrietta, Virginia, and so they kind of are supposed to have a little bit of a twang, and so it really immersed me in a way that I wasn't sure if it was going to, because these books are so atmospheric that I was like, is the audiobook going to live up to the atmosphere of this? And it did, and it was another one that I just really fell into. I listened to it and during long walks, and like I was listening to it I think in like the fall winter, so it was kind of perfect, and it was a really good time. I highly enjoyed the narrator. Narrators are what really make or break an audiobook, so all of these audiobooks have fantastic narrators because otherwise I wouldn't have liked the books. Speaking of narrators, I want to just highlight one of my favorite audiobook narrators, and that is Bonnie Turpin. The 2 books that I listened to from her, actually I listened to 3, but one of them isn't included on this list because it's not one of my favorite audiobooks, but the 2 that are included on this list couldn't be more different, and that is Born by Jeff Vandermeer and The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. One is a YA contemporary, one is a new weird adult science fiction, and they're so different, but her narration is amazing. So from now on, I basically check like any book that she's narrating that's coming out, and I know I'm gonna listen to it on audio because she's so good. She can narrate anything. I love her. The emotion she puts into her like narration, so good. And like I said, these 2 books couldn't be more different, but I loved them because I was listening to her. The Hate You Give I actually listen to in the gym. I don't listen to audiobooks in the gym, but I was so engrossed in it that I had to keep listening to it, even though I shouldn't have because it was towards the end and I at times was tearing up, but it was fine. They're both so good and she's an excellent narrator. If you find an audiobook narrator that you really like, make sure you look them up because they have websites for like all the audiobook narrators and you can see what they've done and you can just listen to all the books that they've narrated. It's fantastic. Next we have American Gods by Neil Gaiman. This one also is a full cast and I listened to this while traveling back and forth across the country for Christmas this year. So I was in the car. This is an excellent road trip book. Not if you have young kids in the car. This is adult content, like rated R, adult. But if you are just traveling yourself or with all adults, this is excellent and it's about gods and mythology and all this stuff. And it's really good for a road trip because there's a road trip going on within this and it's excellent. And it's a really long audiobook. So if you have a long trip, it's perfect for that. Then we have The Golem and the Jinni by Helene Vecker. This is beautiful. It reminds me a lot of the Night Circus as far as like the narration and everything. And it is a historical fantasy. So it's historical fiction mixed with fantasy because it has these two creatures from different religions and different backgrounds in New York City. It is so good. Very atmospheric. I really like a good atmospheric audiobook, and this is definitely that. Then we have The Magician series by Lev Grossman. I actually only listened to the last book on audio, but I wish I would listen to the full series on audio. The first book in particular was a pretty difficult book for me. I just didn't really enjoy it, although it's worth it. Later on, after you've read it, because the rest of the series ties into it, I have a whole review on this series, so you can check that out if you don't know what I'm talking about. But these are excellent on audio. So if I ever reread the series, I'm definitely going to be listening to it on audio. And lastly, we have the very first audiobook that I ever listened to, and that was Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan. This is what made me fall in love with audiobooks. This is what made me fall in love with audiobook narration and how engrossed you could get in audiobooks. I absolutely loved it. It's about a weird bookstore and this guy starts working there and there's something going on in like the back stacks and there's almost like this like secret book club going on and he gets like pulled into it and it's in a 24-hour bookstore. So it's a book for book lovers. So it's kind of the perfect audiobook to start with and I had a great experience and that kind of opened the door for me into audiobooks. So those are some of my favorite audiobooks. Comment down below, let me know some of your favorites. I always want to get new recommendations, new narrators that are really good. I am constantly listening to audiobooks because of my commute and work and stuff. So definitely comment down below and let me know what some of your favorites are. So thank you all for watching and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.